Hello everyone, Mr. John here from Areteem Institute with this week's Thursday Tidbit talking about an AMC 8 problem this week. Believe it or not, the testing opens for the 2024 AMC 8 next Thursday. So, New Year, Happy New Year, belated to everyone, but ready or not, AMC 8 is coming. Remember, for the AMC 8, testing is done over a week, so make sure you check with your school or testing center for when you are taking the exam. It could be as early as that Thursday, or it could be the next Monday, different things like that as well. Reminder, 40 minutes, 25 questions. I want to highlight here that there's no penalty for guessing. Be sure you remember that because you can always put down an answer. You should have no blank answers on your answer sheet when you submit it. You might get lucky, get a few extra points that way as well. So early good luck to everyone. If you want to practice some more AMC problems, be sure to check out our ZIML site linked in the description below for more mocks and more problems you can work on as well. But let's jump into our question from today. It's one of my favorite from last year's exam. So some of you might know this problem, but it is a good problem to discuss quick. The letters P, Q, and R are entered into a 20 by 20 table according to the pattern shown below. How many P's, Q's, and R's will appear in the completed table there? So, couple of different things we can discuss here. And the first thing I want to mention is you want to be comfortable taking a moment to explore a problem. Some problems you will see immediately what to do. If you don't immediately see something to do, don't panic. Start writing down what you know. Start seeing if you can notice anything and go from there. So we have a pattern for the P's, the Q's, and the R's. So let's kind of make note of that here a bit. So we have the three letters that we're working with in this scenario. And if we start thinking about the pattern, what do we mean by the pattern? Well, let's look here. So we have some P's at the bottom here. And let me just jump to the next P's. Where do we see P's again? We have this line of P's. We have this line of P's with some dots, but I'll say in a second, they actually give us a hint here, whether you notice it right away or not. And then we have similar things with the Q's in this scenario. So we have our Q's up like this in that case. And lastly, the R's. So just to highlight the three letters, I will put those out here as well. Now, one thing highlighting this makes clear is that we're talking about diagonals. All of these patterns are appearing on the diagonal there as well. And before we start looking at the other pattern, just a little bit of a warning. Remember that we don't have the full 20 by 20 grid here. But actually, thinking about this as a 5 by 5 grid, right? If we focus our attention for a moment on just this 5 by 5 grid, there is something else I want to notice here. Notice as we get in the middle there, then we start decreasing. So the pattern is going to be a little complicated because our diagonals get longer and longer. Of course, once you hit the middle of the square, right, if you connect the two opposite vertices of that square, you get the longest diagonal, and then this is going to start decreasing. There's actually a nice trick we can do with that, but let's wait on that for a moment. Now, the one nice thing about our pattern, at least until we get to that middle point, is think about how many P's we have. The first diagonal has one P. The second diagonal has two Q's, right? So when I'm talking about the diagonals, I mean our first diagonal, second diagonal, third diagonal, etc. So the third diagonal has 3 R's. We have a pretty nice pattern here. Fourth diagonal, 4 P's, 5 Q's, 6 R's. Remember that we have some dots here. So actually in our 20 by 20 grid, we would have an R here and an R there. That is our 6. And then this is going to continue up all the way. So just to maybe save a little time, let me focus on the P's. We would have 7, we would have 10, 13, 16, 19, stuff like that as well. Now, what is one thing we want to be careful with here? We want to be careful because actually the longest diagonal is 20. So if we looked at this here, right, we would have 20 Q's in that case. And then what would happen from this point? Now we would start decreasing again. So we would have 19 R's and then 18, 17, 16. This is where the pattern on the other half of that diagonal would start decreasing there as well. Now, let me fill in a couple more numbers at the top of this as well. 15, 14. I'm not going to finish out all of this here, but we can actually use something to come up with a trick for our answer at this point. Now, what if we think about this number in the middle? We have 20 Q's in the middle in that case. So the only time we see a 20 in our grid is in this middle here, right there. Now, what about 19? 19 appears in the R column and the P column. What about 18? We have 18 for then, and let me pick pink for this, 18 for the R and the P. And we can actually use this to notice a pattern. Then we have 17 Q's. This appears twice there, right? But then what about 16? We have 16 for the R's and the P's in this pattern that way as well. So if you think about this pattern a little bit in this scenario, one way to answer the question is to notice the following, right? So what can we notice here, right? There's actually going to be one more Q than the P's and the R's. We can actually use this to come up with our answer, right? Okay, we have 20 Q's, then 19 P's, 19 R's. We have 17 Q's, right? And then we have our kind of different 16 and 16, right? So we have that type of relationship here. You can notice we have the same number of P's and R's, right? They match up perfectly there. And then for the Q's, we actually have one more of them in this case. If it helps, look at that 5 by 5 grid again. Look at this one, right? So we have 1 P, then 2 Q's, 1 R, 2 Q's, right? 3 P's, 4 R's, 4 P's, right? The P's and R's match up, and if you count up the number of Q's, we have one more Q than the P's and the R's. And in fact, only one answer choice fits this. We can actually be coming up with an answer right now and say, okay, we now know the answer has to be, because of this pattern, 133 P's, 134 Q's, 133 R's. Now, let's say you were a little bit skeptical about this. For example, what if you say, okay, I understand there are the same number of P's and R's. I'm a little confused about the Q's, or maybe you want to check this for all of the numbers. How could we go about checking this? Notice we have a pattern here. So let's look at the number of Q's. What if we wanted to directly calculate the number of Q's here? Well, I do want to, and hopefully people are good, that the pattern does go up and down. So I'm going to do 2 times. We're going to have 2 2s and 5 and 8, right? We have that pattern that works out nicely there. Up to 17. But then at 17, we go to 20. There's only one 20, and then we start going back down in reverse. So 2 plus 5 plus 8 plus 11, 14, 17, 20, 17, 14, 11, 8, 5, 2. So we have that doubling in the middle there for the number of Q's. And remember your tricks for this. This is an arithmetic series. We're adding up an arithmetic sequence. So we have 2, and then what is 2 plus 17? If you look at the first and the last term, right? 2 and 17 is 19. What about 5 and 14? That's 19. 8 and 11 is 19. So you can have 2 times 19 times 3. So that's 2 times 57, which is going to be 114, plus 20 is 134, which matches. So if you're a little bit confused there in terms of one more Q than P's, you can say, okay, how would we actually calculate this? And you can calculate this to get 134. And there's only one answer that has 134 Q's and the same number of P's and R's. Of course, using the same thing we did for the number of Q's, it's good practice. Double check that the number of P's is 133, the number of R's is 133, and check that and let us know if you have any troubles there as well. Okay. Otherwise, that is a good place to stop for our problem today. Stay tuned for a new problem next week. If you have ideas for an alternate solution to this problem or comments about the solution, let us know below. If you have requests for more things you want to see, more topics we should explore in the Thursday Tidbits, we'd love to hear from you as well. Otherwise, thank you all for watching. Give this video a like and subscribe if you want the most recent updates as well. Otherwise, I will see you all next time. Goodbye.